We're back on the record in the matter of Gregory Martin, 24PR00777. All parties are present, and we are set to continue with Ms. Salisbury's cross-examination of Ms. Poole. Go ahead.
Thank you, guys. Ms. Poole, just one additional question. Are you still employed by the county?
Mm-hmm.
You are, okay. And what position was that again?
It's lieutenant, but I'm commander, shift commander, C shift.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. No more questions, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rudolph.
Your Honor, I have no question. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Poole.
Yes.
I should say, any redirect, Ms. Wilkes?
Yes, but go ahead, Your Honor.
Oh, no, I was going to let her go, but you have the opportunity to do redirect, which means you don't get to do new things, but you can ask your questions to clarify things based on what other people ask. So if you have questions to clarify, go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead.
If Greg Morton Jr. has an agreement with his father for $7.5 million, the question was asked to you, do you feel that he should still be guardianship of his father?
If it's documented, yes, I think it should be. If it's documented, it was his father's intention of his father's wish, or it should be honored.
Do you agree sometimes that there's family feuds in the family regardless if a document was done prior to or afterwards?
Absolutely, happen in all families. Regardless of the document or not, some family member will come try to sue for additional funds that they did not receive. It happens all the time.
Are you aware that the lawsuit involves Greg Jr. doing electrical work for his dad on various job sites, various contracts for over 33 years and got very little pay?
I was not aware of it until yesterday.
Okay.
First time I met him was yesterday, so Friday.
Do you think that Greg Jr. should be paid for the 33 years of work?
Absolutely should be.
Is it possible for Greg Jr. and Greg Sr. to work together, and Greg Sr. should pay his son?
As an employee, yes.
Is Greg Jr. and Greg Sr. based on the personalities that you saw of Mr. Martin when you met him, capable of living together as father and son, and Greg Jr. taking care of him and giving him a quality of life for the remainder of his days?
I think based on my experience when I met him on Friday, I think it'd be an excellent choice to take care of his father.
Do you think that Greg Jr. would be the best choice as far as getting him to medical appointments and making medical decisions?
I believe that he'd be the best decision maker based on his 7 sisters. I believe that he's the best person. He's the oldest. He's more knowledgeable. It seems like he's more together. So I believe that he'll be the best person to take care of his father.
Mrs. Attorney Salisbury asked you a question if you knew how Selena Wilkes purchased her investment properties.
I said, no, I don't.
Do you feel, based on Mrs. Wilkes' hard work, that she would qualify for a bank loan just as anyone else would?
Of course, you get access, she'll be able to get loans.
Do you know why that would have been a question even asked?
I'm sorry, to you loud, please.
Do you know why that would have even been a question asked?
I don't know.
Speculation.
Sustained. Next question.
Next question. Have you known Mrs. Wilkes to be generous?
Yes, you're a very generous person. Very generous. Not that I have received anything in terms of generosity from you, but I know you're generous with the church people. You're generous with helping kids in the community. If you don't know if you just walk up and give them money, like it was a church where they just walked up and gave a lady money. So she called you her angel. So I know you're a very generous person.
Are you aware of some of the projects Mrs. Wilkes did with Sister Phillip, Christian Women Against Crime?
Objection, we're outside of the scope.
Sustained.
How would you feel if Multnomah County, is that one of the larger counties in the state of Oregon?
It is the largest, out of 32 counties, the largest county.
How would you feel if you had a family member and someone came from another county wanted to be guardianship or fiduciary?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
I'll reword the question, Your Honor.
Also, you feel glad I can hear that question.
Out of all the, you just indicated that you're aware that Multnomah County is one of the larger counties in Oregon, the state of Oregon. Do you feel that there's other fiduciaries and guardianships in the county that could accommodate Mr. Martin if his son is not given authority to take care of him?
Objection, speculation, outside of the redirect.
Well, I'm going to sustain it. I think there's a lack of foundation, so sustained.
Do I have to ask another question or reword it?
You can, yes, go ahead.
What would you think would happen to an individual if someone came out of another county other than the county that they're familiar with?
Objection, speculation.
She hasn't finished the question.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Wilkes.
To request to be fiduciary or guardianship.
I'm not sure that I understand, because you jumped in too early, but I need you to repeat the question as well. It's okay?
Now the memory has to go back with all the...
Okay, that's fine.
How would you feel if Mr. Martin was your loved one and someone came out of a smaller county and there were many, 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 many fiduciaries and guardianships in the county he lives in to choose from?
Personally, I would.
Objection, speculation.
Okay.
Sustained. Sustained.
I don't know how I need to word it to get this question about, but eventually I will get it right.
Well, I can tell you, Ms. Wilkes, generally speaking, it's not relevant to the court.
Okay,
How Ms. Poole feels about whether there's someone in Multnomah
Okay.
County or in Lane County or Lynn County.
okay,
It's not helpful to my decision.
Okay.
It's not relevant. is the
okay.
point.
Thank you
Okay,
for
generally, how do you feel questions?
Thank you for
Not always
clarifying.
irrelevant, but a lot of times they are. Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that
Yeah.
for me, Your Honor.
Okay,
I
all right.
appreciate that.
Do you have anything else?
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Wilkes. Ms. Poole, thank you very much for your time. I know over 2 days.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you
You'll
very much.
get your. Was that your son?
That's my nephew,
Your nephew. All right, we'll get him back in here to help you. Okay.
and my nephew Jordan.
All right.
Harry. Yeah, you know, nephew, my friend Harry. Yeah.
Your nephew got younger since last time I saw him.
He's like a brother to me. Harry's like a brother.
Oh, yeah.
We've known each other for over 60 years. Been 62 years and I've known you. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you both. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm so glad my mom told me so much about you. That's Patsy, her grade I forgot. In 68.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, she passed in 2014. She was. I got you. Yeah. Little Michael, and Nicole.
Yes.
Nicole's traveling to Georgia. Michael's
When you saw her, Patsy, you know, she was a staff person.
she was a good woman.
Yeah, she really was. So sorry to hear that she died. I don't know what happened to her. What you're going to do,
She just got sick. Like, that wasn't cancer, but it was something else.
Well, it's so
I was
amazing.
with her last days.
What?
I was with her last days.
You were also
She come to Montana to see me too.
She's
She's
really
like,
awesome. She's a nice person. Thank you, really know that. I appreciate that.
okay, you got it. Thank you. God bless you both.
Small world after all, ain't no question. What the wrong thing?
I guess I know it.
All right, Ms. Wilkes, your next witness.
Lieutenant Jackson.
All right, sir. Come on up to the Witness stand here.
Okay.
Good, remain standing and take direction from my clerk, okay?
Please raise your right hand.
Hungry.
Under the penalty of perjury, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please be seated. And for the record, please say your first and last name and spell them both.
Harry Jackson, Harry Jackson, Jackson.
Good morning, Mr. Jackson. There'll be several people that have questions for you today, but we'll start with Ms. Wilkes, okay?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming, Lieutenant.
Uh-huh.
Could you share with the court who you worked for?
Well, I'm retired now, but I was working for Portland Police. 34 years in law enforcement. State Police, Airport Police, Portland Police, OHSU Police.
And how many years did you patrol northeast Portland?
It had to be somewhere around 30 as a police officer. I worked over there for about 15 years as a security guard, Fred Meyer, McDonald's, and Safeway, before I got to be a police officer.
Did you know Mr. Martin in the community?
Martin.
He would be known as Amar to you.
No, I didn't know him that well.
Okay. How long have you known Mrs. Wilkes?
I've known Mrs. Wilkes since elementary school. Our church at Morning Star Baptist Church. And we went to the same church. And after I went to the military, I was gone for a while, came back and got into law enforcement and reestablished our communication and friendship again. So that was, I don't know, about 50, 60 years ago.
Did you know Mrs. Wilkes had real estate in the community?
Yes, I did.
Did you know how Mrs. Wilkes purchased it?
By working hard. That's what I know of Mrs. Wilkes, a hard worker. And from what I've seen is she did it all basically on her own, hard work in the community.
Did you ever know Mrs. Wilkes to have any partnerships with anybody in her real estate?
Your Honor, at this point, I'm going to object on relevance grounds. I don't know what this has to do with the issues before the court. Frankly, I don't even know what Mrs. Wilkes is asking of the court at this point. So it's difficult for me to know what is relevant to her case. But this line of questioning certainly has nothing to do with whether Mr. Martin is incapacitated and whether Ms. Fuller should be appointed as the guardian and conservator. So I'm objecting on relevance.
I object to his objection, Your Honor.
Okay, that's noted. So, Ms. Wilkes, I'm going to turn to you. I'm going to take a broad look at the case. I think I know what you're asking of the court and what you're arguing, but I'm not you. So if you could tell me what it is that at the end of the day you're asking this court to do, that'll be helpful for me to determine if these questions are relevant, okay?
Well, at the end of the day, I'm asking the court that Mr. Martin does not be taken out of his family environment. And Lieutenant Jackson, when he patrolled the community, he knows where Mr. Martin's property is, but considering his age and stuff and the time he hasn't been with the force, he may not he's 82 years old. He doesn't look his age, but he's 82, Lieutenant Jackson. So a lot of people in the community knew Mr. Martin as Amar by the name of his electrical company. So some of the questions I'm asking leads up to Greg Jr. being appointed to take care of his father for the rest of his life.
So you're asking that as I understand one of your arguments is that the least restrictive means of taking care of Mr. Martin Sr. is for his son, Mr. Lee, to do it rather than the professional fiduciary. Am I understanding your argument
Yes, Your
correctly?
Honor. And
Now, I guess what I want to follow up, because what you filed in the case, as to your objection, one of your objections, as I understand it, was that a professional fiduciary was not needed because you are the power of attorney and you were suitable to take care of this. Are you no longer arguing that?
I'm no longer arguing that. I shared that with you the last
Okay,
2
maybe I
weeks,
forgot. And so
that I
we've
wasn't
had 5 days,
interested in competing with Mrs. Fuller or Mr. Martin as Greg Jr. as I just want him to be in an environment where he's with family, which will give a little longevity to him, and he can talk about good times, old times, or whatever with family members that are familiar.
Okay, so thank you. This is helping me. I think what I'm hearing you say is that you're no longer arguing that the court should uphold the power of attorney, which lists you as the decision maker. You're no longer arguing that, correct?
Correct,
And
Your
instead,
Honor.
what you're arguing is that you believe that Mr. Relieve, as the son of the protected person, should be is suitable and capable of caring for and making decisions for his father, and it's the least restrictive means within which to do so. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, Your Honor. And the reason.
Okay, and so the questions that you're asking Mr. Jackson, can you go back to the question then? That'll help me.
If,
I know that was a lot, so I'll give you some time.
If I
I'll
can
give you
recall
some
it,
time
we're
gather
all
yourself.
seniors up in here. We have a senior moment when we're disrupted. So, I'll just ask another question.
Okay, go ahead. So that question's withdrawn.
Mr. Jackson, during your time of patrolling the community, I'm asking this question to help him get familiar with who Amar is, Your Honor. During the time you patrolled the community, did you ever recall a property on North Beach with Errol, the gentleman out there you've been talking to, at that site with a man named Amar?
I remember the name Amar, and I remember the location.
Okay. On the court records, he's called Gregory Martin, and you probably would not have known that because everyone knows him by Amar.
Amar.
Objection, that's not a question.
Sustain. All right. So Ms. Brooks will ask you a question, okay, sir?
Okay.
So, Mr. Jackson, during the time of you patrolling the area, can you describe to the court of Mr. Amar doing at his properties, remodeling, et cetera, et cetera?
My memories of Mr. Amar are fairly limited as far as what he did. I just knew his name and what he was doing in the community for the community. And that was favorable to me. And I have lived in that area for a long time, and my dad died at 102. His mom was 103. And having an environment and helping him was something that I worked hard to make sure that the people in the community, especially young people, respected the elders who needed help. And I've experienced a lot of the things that we're talking about. My dad had a 3rd grade education, and I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and I made sure that my dad was looked afterward and that he lived in the house until the day he died at 102. That his environment was conducive to a person who worked all his life with a 3rd grade education and provided for 6 kids. And for the things that he didn't know, we provided for him, and I'm the oldest of 6 kids. And I made sure that we did that. And some of the things that I'm hearing and picking up on is the things that I didn't let my dad go like. That's all I want to say.
Okay, thank you. This is Mr. Martin's son.
Uh-huh.
And he would like to have full custody of Mr. Martin and do the things that you just described you did with your dad in his last days.
Uh-huh.
He would like to be able to do the same.
Yes.
No, I'm going to object. That is not a question.
Well, I think she hasn't gotten it. You know, I mean, if you just, I realize there's some lead-in sometimes, but if you can go and get to your question, okay?
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
That's okay.
I'm trying to sort of help accommodate Mr. Jackson's memory at the senior age. And okay, are you aware that this is Mr. Amar's son?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Are you aware the purpose of us being here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Miss Greg Jr., he's named after his dad, Greg Jr., is petitioning the court to have sole custody of his dad.
Your Honor, I'm going to object at this point. Mr. Waleed stated that he is not petitioning to be guardian. And so I think that's a misstatement of Mr. Waleed's position.
I think he said that wasn't changed, but let's check in with him. So reserve ruling on your objection. Mr. Waleed, same question I had for Ms. Wilkes. I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. I know we've had different days. And so as I understand your argument to the court, you believe that a professional guardian is not needed for your father because your father has signed a power of attorney, which you haven't presented yet in court, but you haven't put on your case yet. So I assume that's probably coming in your case. So that's one of your arguments, that an appointment is not needed by Oregon advocates because you're here and you can do it. Am I understanding that's one of your arguments?
That's one angle.
Okay,
Correct.
and then the other one I understand to be is that even if the court were to find that I'm not going to uphold a power of attorney should there be one, but I believe that I'm not going to uphold it. You argue that still, as his son, an appointment of an indefinite guardian is not necessary still, because again, you're here and you're qualified and capable of caring for and making decisions for your father. Is that an alternative argument?
That's the other angle, yes.
Okay, and third, you were objecting to Ms. Wilkes being continued as power of attorney, but she's no longer asking, so that's really an argument that's off the table. And lastly, if the court were to reject all of the arguments that I just said, you're saying, Judge, I don't think Ms. Fuller is the right choice. If you're going to go with somebody, I don't think she's the one. Is that accurate?
Yes. Can I
Okay.
explain?
Yes, go ahead.
Before my father got into his these issues here that are before the court, the current Oregon Advocates LLC and their guardians and conservators and their legal counsel first did not properly administer the law and petition the court correctly as far as giving everyone notice. That particular petition should be dismissed because it lacks standing and also jurisdiction, my father never being served. Second, my power of attorney, durable power of attorney, did not kick in. I was never a power of attorney until my father became incapacitated. And I called the Adult Protective Services inquiring about my father in December of 2023. I reported these abuses that were happening to my father that we're all becoming aware of. They were given the information about me being his durable power of attorney, and that it only became active once I was able to prove through the ethics committee from the VA hospital that once he became incapacitated, my durable power of attorney kicked in. Prior to all of that, my father and I have an agreement, 3 of them, that were documented in June, Father's Day of 1993, where I worked for my father as an electrician, and in exchange for my labor, it was actually purchases for down payments for the property that we're talking about now. I upheld my honor, and being a master electrician and living in another state, I was fortunate that when I tested in Washington and Oregon for my license, my father signed my affidavits of experience verifying 51,500 hours have been worked.
Okay, I'm gonna have you, Mr. Wilkes, I'm gonna have you just pause for a second, because all of this information, I think, is what you're gonna testify to when it's your turn for your case. So, in the interest of just time and not having to repeat, I think that's where you're going with what you wanna talk about. So, now that I think all of us have an understanding of what Ms. Wilkes is arguing and what Mr. Walid is arguing and wanting, and then I'll go back to Mr. Rudolph. You had an objection, and I'll be honest, I don't remember the question or the objection. So I'll have you, if you still have an objection, if you could remind me.
My objection was that Ms. Wilkes had stated that Mr. Walid had petitioned the court for custody of his father, and I said that was a misstatement of his legal position.
Yeah, I mean, she's not a lawyer. I think the concept, I'm going to overrule the objection. The concept is the same. She is suggesting that Ms. Fuller is, that the appointment is not necessary, and that Ms. Fuller is not suitable, and that rather instead Mr. Walid as the son should be appointed. That's her argument. And so I'll give her some leeway that she maybe doesn't understand custody versus guardianship and petitions and that sort of thing. I think we all kind of get the point. So you can ask your question, Ms. Wilkes.
So, Lieutenant Jackson, based on your experience of taking care of your dad, do you think Mr. Martin should be taken out of his family environment?
Objection, speculation.
Overruled. You can answer, Mr. Jackson.
No, I think he should be in his family environment. Family is a big thing when you get to be older, and you know things about your family that you can provide for them, and you can tell when there are changes in what they need and what they work for all their life, and you try to help as much as you can, because they're kind of limited. And if you can add something to what they're looking for and what they're hoping and prayed for all of their lives, I think a family member should be there to do that.
Thank you. And do you think, or would you say that I'm a thief?
No. No way.
Do you think I would steal anything from Mr. Amar Gregory Martin?
No. From what I understand is you've helped in a lot of different ways. Like you helped me.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Willie. Go ahead.
Are you a father, Mr. Jackson?
Yes,
And how many sons do you have?
just one child.
One child.
And he's
So-
across the street working right now,
Okay.
police officer.
Okay. So, being a father, can you imagine setting some estate planning for your child? Like, do you have any plans with your child?
I've had plans since I came to Oregon in 1955 for my son.
Okay. Now, as a father, can you imagine my father sitting down with his elders, and coming up with a estate planning where you both decide to work together?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
Are you aware that my father and I have an agreement?
Yes,
Is it possible for that agreement to be agreed upon by both of us?
you say both your...
My father and I,
Oh yeah,
that we have a plan. We have a plan.
yes,
Do you think as a father that your plan should be followed?
yes.
What if you signed that agreement?
That's even more so it should be followed, whatever you sign.
Is it honorable to live up to your father's plan that he had for you?
Yes,
What if he wrote that plan 30 years ago?
am I to comment on that?
Well, let me give you something. Would you want your child to follow that plan even if you wrote the plan 30 years ago?
Yes, and because 30 years ago you probably haven't suffered some things that you've experienced in a later life, but you were able to make a better decision at that time.
So do you think it's honorable to live up to your father's expectations?
Oh yes,
Or do you think it's honorable for me to live up to my father's expectations?
oh yes,
And then if things don't go right, is it honorable to step in and would uphold the law?
the law, yes.
And if that law meant that I was to work for my father for 33 years with a limited amount of resources, but in the end, would you give your son what he earned as part of his duty and responsibility to uphold the agreement that you put into play?
Yes. There was a lot of sacrifices to holding up to your end of the bargain. And personally, I would be afraid of what would happen if I didn't do that.
You know my father somewhat, right?
Yes, sir.
Or how do you think he would feel in his incapacitated state? He discovered I did everything that he asked me to do.
Objection, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
How do you think my father, what do you think my father, oh, better yet, my father's a great man. If he couldn't speak right now, like he sees me, he can't see me here in court, he can't be here. Would you say that my father would be proud of me?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Do you think my father's proud of me?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Would you be proud of your son doing what I'm doing?
Yes.
Would you be proud of your son taking these lawyers to school about your rights?
Yes.
Do you think I should be a lawyer in order to advocate for my father?
No.
Would I be selling my father short if I just gave up?
I think you would. I do believe in family. I believe in, like I was at my dad's bedside when he passed, that it's important for you to be with people, respect what you have seen and what they've given you, life, the ability to be a decent person and stay out of trouble, and have the decency to respect your mother and father at their age. And I know that Miss Wilkes could understand what I'm trying to say. Honor your mother and father, that your days will be lengthened. That's what I was taught by my daddy. And so I believe that. And if my son went by the wayside, I would kind of wonder why. Because that's what I've tried to convey to him. Do that for your mother and I. You're the only kid that we got. And I want to be able to pass along a good work ethic, a good belief in we're all brothers and sisters here on this planet, and that we need to make sure that we respect people, and especially our mother and father and our family.
Do you believe that it's right to stand up for your rights?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Now you heard the judge ask a few questions a moment ago concerning that he might not uphold my father's agreement. How does that make you feel if you were my father?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
How do you feel if you had an agreement with your son took other people, other third parties to court on behalf of that? How would you feel if the judge told you he might not uphold your obligation?
I would say I'd have to consult to the best of my ability what the law would say, what I do believe the good Lord would be expecting from me. I'd have to evaluate those things. Now, being an attorney is not my forte, but being a person that, when my father held me as a baby, I'd have to go back to where I couldn't take care of myself then, but he took care of me. And I feel that if I went astray from that, I'd be neglecting some things. And that would hurt me. So I would want to try to live up to what we agreed upon to the best of my ability. Now, if I came before a judge and he says the law won't permit this, I'd be disappointed, and I would have to do everything within my power to make sure that what the judge said would be something that he couldn't go any other way than that. But I'd spend my last breath trying to provide what my dad and I agreed upon.
Did you hear that judge say it was not within the law to not uphold the agreement?
Yes, I heard that.
Was that your understanding?
I want to make sure that I did understand what he said. It's not within the law. Is that what I heard?
Yes. Did you hear him say that? But it was not within the law.
I'm gonna have you pause for a second. I just want to show there's not a misunderstanding here. Mr. Waleed, I was trying to understand what your arguments were, and they were based upon your pleadings and what I've heard so far. There were a number of arguments, 1, 2, 3, and if one wasn't upheld, then you'd go to 2. 2 wasn't upheld, you'd argue through. You had a number of different arguments. That conversation was capturing what I understood your arguments to be to help me understand what are relevant questions. I haven't made any decisions on anything yet. I want to make clear about that. I just wanted to make sure I understood what your line of thinking was in your argument so I could best help this trial proceed. Does that make sense?
It does now.
Okay,
Thank you.
I didn't want you to think that I already decided that I'm not doing this and I'm not doing that. That's not what is happening. I just wanted to make sure that I understood what you're saying.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Jackson,
Yes, sir.
if you had an agreement with your son and you expect him to uphold that agreement by any means necessary,
Not by any means, but I would be in law enforcement for 34 years. I would feel good if he did everything lawfully to assist me. And I wouldn't, because he'd be asking for trouble if he went any other way. But I would expect him to do what he could do lawfully to try to uphold, and like I said, try to uphold what we had agreed upon. And I would hope that he would get some understanding from others who would have the same, let's say, agenda to try to do what they maybe had promised someone who they held in high esteem during that understanding, to try to fulfill what the promise was. A promise is a promise. To some people it don't mean very much, but to others it means everything, because there's a time coming for me, if I live long enough, to where I'm going to need somebody to understand what I stood for, trying to do the right thing, and now I may need some help in helping me fulfill what I wanted to do in my last years. And so I would look forward to my son doing everything that's legal within his power, talking to other people who have the same concerns that he would have, to try to fulfill our agreement.
how would you feel if a third party showed up in front of what you and your son agreed to, not even existing a third party, to replace what you and your son had already planned, and they, the third party, was an illegitimate business when they filed?
I would have a problem with that, a real problem, because number one, they weren't a part of the original agreement with my father, so they don't know the circumstances under which we had our agreement. And showing up later, they may not have the same concerns that my father and I had when we made that agreement. So there would be some questions in my mind. And like I said, I would go to great lengths to make sure that if that person went against me and my father's will, I would make sure it wasn't something that just came up overnight and it was in self-interest. I'll be looking at a promise that I made to my father, like as though I made it to the good Lord, And I made some promises like that to the good Lord. And I just couldn't go against it.
How would you feel, or you have an agreement with your son and he's fulfilling that obligation? How would you feel?
I would say that that's what we agreed upon, and he's trying, from what I can see, his best to uphold our agreement. And I would say I can see that he's trying. There may be some things that I don't see, but what I see, he's trying.
How would you feel about a third party interfering with that plan you and your son had? How would you feel about that?
I'd have some real problems with that.
Would you sue them? Would you take them to court?
I would do what would be legal, that is going to settle what we should do according to what my father and I agreed upon. We could talk about it, but I would have problems with the interference at a late time and not being a part of our agreement. I'd have problems with that, and I'd have to go to great ends to try to make sure that I could hold up legally to what my father and I agreed upon.
And if they interfered with that plan so much that they tried to take your property, take the assets that maybe you pledged to your son to do what he had to do, and say your son did that work, how would you feel about that?
I would feel that it's wrong to try to do that to my father and I. And I would say both of us, because we had an agreement, just the two of us. And a third person who I don't know what their motives may be. Even if it looked legitimate, I still wouldn't know what their motives are, because they weren't part of the original agreement. And coming in at a late hour on to change what we did, I'd have some problems and I'd have to pursue it.
What if in your agreement that you had with your son was once you became incapacitated, he was supposed to show up, and then in the process he shows up? Some third party people, instead of following the original agreement, they jump in between and say that this emergency allows us to interfere with what your plan was for the last 30 years. How would you feel about that?
I wouldn't like that at all. As a matter of fact, that says, hold on. This is what we agreed to. You were nowhere around. Now you want to come and insert yourself. I got a problem with that, and that's putting it mildly. I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about legally. I don't know what you want, but I know that you're late and you weren't in on the original agreement. So I will have to check this out in any legal way that I can to find out if you're going to be a part of this, if my father and I in our agreement can accept you, or if we're going to expel you. And I can tell you that if that person didn't come up with what basically my father and I agreed with, we'd have a fight, a legal fight. And because that's not, you're coming late to this, and it's not what we agreed upon. And I respect my father enough to make sure, even though he can't say anything now, I'm going to go back to the time that we made this agreement. Was he of sound mind? And if he was, then that's where we're going to be right now as far as how I believe and how I'm going to proceed.
I have no other questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jackson, for coming today.
Welcome, thank you.
Make sure you can hear me. So I have a couple questions. Can you explain how you know Mr. Martin?
I know him from some things in the community and things that he's done.
Did he talk to you about his financial planning?
No, I never had a chance to talk to him.
Did he talk to you about his estate planning?
No.
When did you meet Mr. Waleed?
This man here, I'm not that good with names. I met him the other day when I came in.
So in the last 5 days?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you know intimately about his background?
Yes.
You know everything about his background?
No, I don't know everything.
Okay. Couple questions. Well, maybe a few more than that. You talk a lot about family and it being important.
Yes.
I think that's good. Do you know of the time period where Mr. Martin was homeless? No. Do you think it'd be okay for someone to become homeless while they have a power of attorney?
Objection.
Overruled.
You can answer the question.
Go ahead and repeat.
Oh, sure, no problem. Do you think it's okay for someone to become homeless while they're under a power of attorney?
I think it's okay
Mm-hmm.
if they become homeless and still become a power of attorney.
While someone else is a power of attorney.
My opinion on that is something I'd have to think about a little bit more.
Okay. If someone's in charge of your money, would you be okay with them using it not for your
Objection.
benefit?
Leading the witness.
Oh, that's what cross-examination is, Mr. Willie.
Okay.
Overruled.
So, if someone's in charge of your money, so your money, is it okay for them to use that money not for your benefit?
No, I don't think it would be if it wasn't for my benefit, but I would have to know that it's not for my benefit and for some other benefit, because I would have to check that out if I could mentally. I would have to check that out and see where they were going with it, because if it was being used for purposes not to benefit me or that person, I have big problems with it.
Okay. Did you know that Adult Protective Services founded an elder financial abuse claim against Ms. Wilkes?
Objection.
Mr. Martin?
Objection.
Hearsay.
Overruled. You can answer. You can answer, sir.
I just kind of heard that in passing. I didn't
Okay.
know.
And being a police officer for quite a long time,
Yes, ma'am.
when Adult Protective Services finds abuse in a case, do you know what happens to it after that?
I would think that they would try to correct and make a proper decision on how distribution should be administered.
Okay. You mentioned the family agreement,
Yes, ma'am.
and you just testified that Mr. Martin didn't talk to you about the family agreement.
I didn't get anything on that.
So how did you find out about it?
Oh, just here and around about what was going on. That's how I found out about it.
So you've read the family agreement?
No,
Have you seen the family agreement?
no,
Were you there to witness the signing of the family agreement?
no. What I'm doing is just trying to make sure that people understand that for a good legal reason, for the right thing, that the Christian person that I know and love and have known them for a long time they're like me, they kind of set in their ways. There's some things they just won't do because they know it's going to come back at them for power a lot bigger than anybody that we have around here. And that's something that you learn as you're growing up in church. It's something you learn as you grow. Before you get to be 21 years of age, you start learning that there is a law and there's consequences for doing things that's not legal and not right. It may come back at you later, and you can't name when or how.
Amen.
If your son did a $33 million UCC claim against your assets and named a lot of people, not just you, but your sibling or that person's siblings and a variety of other entities, would you be happy about that?
Objection, Your Honor. It's hearsay. She's just saying stuff. Where is this she's talking about? She's just not in context.
Well, Mr. Lee, you have told the court and in your pleadings you filed a UCC lawsuit against your dad for millions of dollars, correct?
It's not that. It's not the lawsuit. It was the lien from our previous agreement and notices sent to everyone who was involved in messing with the property. It's a blanket lien.
Okay. Your objection is overruled. Mr. Jackson, you can answer the question.
Answer the question.
Do you want me to repeat it?
Have you repeat that?
Sure, absolutely. Would you be happy if your son had filed a $33 million UCC claim, basically securing it against your property and your son's hypothetical siblings' properties? Would you be happy about that?
No, but I would like to know what the alternative would be if somebody filed that.
Would you be happy about personally being sued for $7.5 million by your son?
No, I wouldn't be happy about that.
So,
Objection.
Overruled.
She's leading the witness.
Overruled.
so if you named somebody in a power of attorney,
Uh-huh.
let's say you named your son,
Uh-huh.
and your son filed this lawsuit against you, and you didn't have capacity, which means your son would need to defend against his own lawsuit. Do you think that protects your interest?
That would depend. That would be depend on what and why he would be suing me, and it would depend on my mental state where I didn't know what to make a good decision on that. And that would kind of leave me out there where I would just kind of be lost. So I would have to be able to try to find out what and why all of this was coming on.
If you were unable to talk and you were unable to comprehend the lawsuit, would you want somebody who wasn't suing you to represent your interest?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe that if you do a power of attorney and time passes, do you believe you have the right to change your mind?
Yes.
Objection.
Overruled.
And again, you had testified about the importance of family.
Yes.
Mr. Waleed lives in Montana.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Martin is here in Oregon.
Uh-huh.
Do you know about any other children of Mr. Martin's?
No, I don't.
You don't. Do you know he has 2 other children that live in Portland? Do you know anything about the family dynamic between the children of Mr. Martin?
No, I don't.
So if a fiduciary, an uninterested fiduciary, was able to make it so that all of the children of Mr. Martin had access to see him, would that be a good thing?
see him, just see him. Going back to the family, yes.
Okay. Do you think it'd be better, or if there was one child who was in charge of Mr. Martin, because again, he's incapacitated, if we're going off that premise, and the other children didn't feel comfortable coming and seeing him, would that be a negative for Mr. Martin?
I think it'd be a negative on how he felt.
Let's see. You mentioned it's important to stay out of trouble.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It's a big one.
Do you know anything about whether or not Mr. Waleed has stayed out of trouble?
Objection, Your Honor. It's irrelevant.
Overruled.
It means you can answer.
No, I don't.
You don't? Okay. Would it change your opinion if he hadn't stayed out of trouble?
Objection. She's leading the witness.
Overruled.
Would you repeat?
Oh, certainly, yes, sorry. Would it change your opinion if he hadn't stayed out of trouble?
I would have to do some extensive investigation to answer that question for myself.
Certainly.
And because I would really want to know the truth. And I would have to go from that to make a decision on where I would stand on that.
Okay.
So I'd have to investigate it, and I'm the kind of person I can get in there and get her done.
Now it's come into evidence before that Mr. Martin has done 2 subsequent powers of attorney, and since the family agreement. In one of those, it said that he's revoked all prior powers of attorney. Do you believe that you're allowed to make that decision to revoke all your past powers of attorney?
And that would be a great big thing that I would have to consider, knowing the facts, before I could change that. And I do believe that's what an agreement is all about. You hang in there with what you put your honor and integrity down for, and in order to change that, it's got to be something substantial.
So do you believe if he did do that, if you were to make that decision to change and revoke prior powers of attorney, would you rather the court consider what you did most recently or what you did a long time ago?
I would think the court, beg your pardon, I think the court would have to look at before and now and come to something in between on what should be done. Because there's a reason for an agreement to begin with, and there would be a reason for change. That reason for change would be something that I would be interested in before I made a decision.
Okay. And last couple questions. You were patrolling the neighborhood for a significant period of time.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember seeing Mr. Waleed working on any of the jobs with Mr. Martin?
No, I haven't.
Thank you, Your Honor. No more questions.
All right, Mr. Real.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Lieutenant.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
I'm the attorney for Gregory Martin.
Okay.
You testified that you never spoke to Mr. Martin about any sort of agreement you may have signed with anybody, correct?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And so you have no idea whether there is a valid agreement?
No, I don't know from looking at it or anything, no.
Okay. And you also have no idea whether Mr. Martin ever executed a valid power of attorney, giving his son any sort of control over his finances. Is that correct?
Well, no, I don't know for sure, but you pick up on things.
Okay. What is, in your words, what is a financial power of attorney? What does it do?
It kind of gives judgment, decision-making based upon trust that had been given to you to make decisions about where, what, and why things should be done with an interest that you have, whether that be money or other things about what should happen to your financial and other agreements that you have.
And would you agree that the financial power of attorney is a very powerful document to give to somebody else?
Yes.
And that it grants another person to manage your assets and income?
Yeah.
If you had named your son as financial power of attorney, and you subsequently became incapacitated and were in a hospital, how would you feel if your son filed a lawsuit against you
Objection.
for $7.5 million?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. You can answer.
If I was able to make a decision on the facts, I would look at why he filed that agreement. First of all, it would probably anger me, but I would want to know why he did that. Is it something that I did to cause him to want to change things for the benefit of somebody, or loss of something that's going to go to somebody that didn't know what my intentions were through working and trying to provide and accomplish something and own something. They wouldn't know what my intentions were, and that would be what I was concerned about, is making sure that all of that effort didn't go by the wayside of somebody wanting to come in and take advantage of it. I would want it to go for something that I intended it to be, and for a person that I trusted to make that decision in the absence of my full mind that I used to have. And I would want them to do the best they could, because I know that there's some people that sometimes they go off the rail, and they could be the reason why they lose a lot of stuff. So I would be looking at that person when I choose them. I'd be looking at what if, do I know this person to be a decent person, a law-abiding person, a God-fearing person? These are the things that I would look at when I chose this person, because I know that they have some standards to begin with.
And Lieutenant, if you had named your son under a power of attorney and then subsequently revoked that power, how would you feel about your son ignoring that and then filing a lawsuit against you for $7.5 million?
I would have to look at the circumstances. If I was able to make a decision, then I would have to look at the circumstances and make a decision on that. Okay. And I would hope that there would be somebody on this earth that could help with that, understanding my position.
And if you subsequently executed legal documents stating that you do not want your son to have authority over your medical or finances, how would you feel if your son ignored that and continued to try to pursue?
Objection, Your Honor. Misleading the witness.
Overruled. You can answer.
How would I feel if he objected to that I tried to do?
If you had signed if you had, after signing a financial power of attorney, if you had later signed documents revoking that authority and stating that you do not want your son making decisions for you, how would you feel if your son ignored those documents?
Objection again, Your Honor. He's misleading the witness.
And continued to try to pursue action against him.
Overruled. You can answer.
And the first thing that I have to consider here, I would say, what is my frame of mind?
In this hypothetical, you are completely incapacitated.
Okay. That would be a tough one for me, because I would want to see some facts before I changed. Because, and I just, if I knew I was in a state where I couldn't make a good decision, I'd have some real personal problems with that.
Do you think it's appropriate for one person to be both a plaintiff in a lawsuit and power of attorney for the defendant in the lawsuit? Or do you believe that that is a conflict of interest?
Objection, Your Honor. Misleading the witness.
Overruled. You can answer.
Would you repeat that?
I would. Do you believe it is appropriate for a person to be plaintiff in a lawsuit, suing another person who's the defendant in the lawsuit, while that person who's the plaintiff is also financial power of attorney for the defendant? Or do you believe that's a conflict of interest?
I gotta say that it would depend, and that's a big question there. And what I'm trying to consider in my answers is, what's my state of mind to make a judgment on that?
In this scenario, you're completely incapacitated.
Okay. I'd have to question why it's changing, and if I had no power to do that, I would hope that there would be somebody that could be honest, with integrity, to look out for the person who is incapacitated.
So if you're completely incapacitated and somebody's filing a lawsuit against you, and you have no way to defend this lawsuit on your own.
Objection, Your Honor. He's repeating the same thing again. He already got his answer.
I do agree with that, so I'm going to sustain the objection.
Your Honor, I wasn't through with my question.
You can finish your question, but it's the same question I think you've asked about 5 times now.
If Mr. Martin signed an advance directive saying that he does not want his children to be making medical decisions.
Objection, Your Honor. It's leading the witness. It's hearsay.
Mr. Lee, he hasn't finished.
Okay.
his question.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
If Mr. Martin signed an advance directive, a legal document, stating his wishes, and he stated in that document that he did not want his children to be involved in his medical decisions, do you think his wishes should be respected?
Yes.
No further questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Riddle. All right, Ms. Wilkes, back to you. This is your witness, so you get to do what's called redirect, like your last witness. It's just to clarify answers that he may have given on cross. It's not to ask new questions. So if you have those types of questions, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lieutenant Jackson,
Yes, ma'am.
35 years you've been patrolling and no law enforcement rules.
Yes, ma'am.
Adult Protection Service,
Yes, ma'am.
you know who they are?
They look out for elderly and some of the problems that they would have at wages, that they would need advice and take care of their needs that they could see.
Do you think if they conducted an investigation without giving proper notice, without knowing whose money belongs to who, in the term of law enforcement, are there certain procedures that's supposed to be followed in law enforcement before you accuse someone?
Yes, there should be facts and reasons and things that you can see and observe before you make a decision.
Do you think there should have been some type of report or evidence given to
Yes,
the accuser?
yeah.
Do you feel that Ms. Wilkes would misuse Mr. Amore's money if it was all his money?
No, I don't think she would. Knowing her, I don't think she would.
Do you know why Mr. Martin would have chosen Mrs. Wilkes?
Objection calls for speculation.
It's the same.
Did you know that Greg Jr. filed a lawsuit?
No, I,
What is just for the clarity of the record, when you say Greg Jr., you need Mr. Relied?
Filed a lawsuit against Mr. Amor. And everybody else, Miss Fuller, Miss Salisbury, Rudolph, in federal court.
he filed it in federal court.
Yes.
Okay. And the question is,
Did you know that this lawsuit was filed trying to protect Mr. Martin
yes,
against third parties?
I had heard about that, yes.
Yeah. Being a father, having a son, and if your son files such lawsuits trying to protect you from a third party, would you approve of that?
It would depend on what I could see would be the reason for him doing that. Because there's kind of two sides to that. And if I believed in him enough to know that he was trying to protect me, I would have some agreement with that. But if there were other reasons, I would have a problem with that.
Okay. If your son filed it trying to protect your assets from outsiders, how would you feel?
I would say, if I was up to date on knowing what my son was, I would say he was looking out for my interest.
Are you aware that Mr. Martin's assets pays Mr. Rudolph's attorney fees, which he's selected by the court, pays Miss Salisbury's attorney fees, pays Miss Fuller, the lady sitting on the end, to oversee Mr. Martin's care? Would you say this is all about the money gathering from Mr. Martin?
I'd have to look and know for sure about their position, what they're assigned to do, and that they would carry it out honorably, that position. And I would dig deep to know that, because there are two sides to this. One, somebody needs help, and the other would be somebody would take an advantage of that opportunity. And I would just have to say that I would want to see the right thing done for the right reasons to the right people. And I know that's tough, but I would look at it myself and says, like I've had to do in my career, I'm not going to shoot this man. I've had to make those decisions on my own because of my own belief. And I tell you, sometimes you stand alone in doing that. But if you're really into doing the right things for the right reason at the right time, that's when you gotta stand up and says, I'll take what comes my way, but as for me, I'm gonna do the right thing. And so I would hope that for people who need help, that these people are going to be out to give help to somebody who's lived their life trying to do the right thing, taking the right breath, not walking out in front of an 18-wheeler. For somebody to say, I'm going to do the right thing for this person, that's what I would be looking for other people, because I do believe that there's consequences. So I would have to say, I'm hoping that the right things are done for the right reasons at the right time for the right people. That's how I feel, and I'm sorry. That's what I have had to rely on, along with my father and his mother, who was 103. And the good Lord's been good to me, is all I can tell you. Because I was able to go through a lot. And being a short black man, I'm not getting into the race thing, but instead of accusing somebody of being a racist, I wanted to see what they could show me. And that's where I am with a lot of this. And it served me well at 80 years of age plus. And I'm hoping that people are doing what they should do. That's all I got to say. Because if I was God, I'd be making some judgments based upon what I would know internally. But I'm just looking at people professing to be a certain thing, and I'm not going to argue with them. So maybe I answered your question, or maybe I didn't.
Yes,
But
you did. Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Wilkes, I'm just looking at the clock. It's noon. I'd like to get Mr. Jackson down and say to come back after lunch, but I wanted to check with you to see how much longer you think you need.
Probably approximately 15 more minutes with him, 15, 20 more minutes, depending on how he responds to his questions.
Then we're going to have to break for lunch. I'm sorry, sir. With that amount of questioning, we're going to have you come back after lunch.
Okay.
No, I have another docket at 1:30, so I think we're coming back here at 2. Is that right, Justin?
Yeah,
2 o'clock.
All right, we'll reconvene here at 2 o'clock. Thank you all.
Okay.
See you then.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.